I keep seeing the same pattern everywhere. Countries getting richer, but people slowly disappearing. Birth rates are falling. Families are shrinking. Entire nations are aging faster than they can replace themselves. And most people don't even notice it happening. It doesn't look like a collapse. It looks like normal life. Until you look at the numbers. Japan is shrinking. South Korea's birth rate is collapsing. Even parts of Europe are heading in the same direction. And then I came across something that didn't fit. Israel. A developed country with a growing population. Not stable. Not flat. Growing. It just crossed over 10.2 million people. That number alone doesn't sound crazy, but here's what made me stop. Back in 1948, Israel had around 800,000 people. That means in less than 80 years, it multiplied more than 12 times. That's not normal for a developed nation. So I started digging. Because either this is an exception or it's a warning. At first, I thought it was just immigration. People moving in, boosting the numbers. And yes, that's part of it. Every year, thousands of people still move to Israel. But when you look closer, immigration isn't the main driver. It's something much simpler. People are actually having children. A lot more than you'd expect from a modern country. While most developed nations are struggling to even hit replacement levels, Israel is comfortably above it. That changes everything. Because population growth doesn't come from one good year, it comes from a pattern that repeats. And Israel has been repeating that pattern for decades. So now the obvious question is, why? Why is one developed country growing while others are slowly shrinking? At first glance, you might think it's economic. Maybe people feel more secure. Maybe the system supports families better. But that explanation doesn't fully hold. There are richer countries, more stable countries, with better welfare systems, and they're still shrinking. So, the answer isn't just money. It goes deeper. It's cultural. In many parts of the world today, having children has become optional, sometimes even discouraged. People delay it. Or avoid it completely. Careers come first. Stability comes first. Freedom comes first. And slowly, without anyone planning it, families just stop. But in Israel, that mindset hasn't taken over the same way. Having children isn't seen as a burden to manage later. It's still part of the default path. Something expected. Something normal. And when an entire society shares that mindset, the numbers follow. There's another layer people don't like talking about. Pressure. Not government pressure, but social pressure. In shrinking countries, there's almost no expectation to have kids. No urgency. But in a growing society, the expectation is still there, quietly shaping decisions. You see it in families. In communities. In how people plan their lives. And that pressure, whether people admit it or not, keeps the system moving. Now zoom out. Because this isn't just about one country. This is about what happens next. If current trends continue, the world splits into two types of countries. On one side, nations that are aging, shrinking, and slowly losing momentum. On the other, countries that are still growing, still expanding, still building future populations. And that imbalance changes everything. Economies. Politics. Power. Because population isn't just a number. It's workforce. It's military. It's innovation. It's survival. Here's the part most people miss. Population decline doesn't feel dangerous in the beginning. In fact, it can feel comfortable. Less crowding. More resources per person. Slower pace of life. But over time, it starts to show. Fewer workers supporting more elderly people. Healthcare systems under pressure. Economic growth slowing down. And eventually, entire regions struggling to sustain themselves. Now compare that to a country that keeps growing. More young people entering the system. More demand. More energy. More expansion. But growth comes with its own pressure. Housing shortages. Rising costs. Infrastructure strain. It's not easy. But it's movement. And movement is power. So when I look at Israel crossing 10.2 million, I don't just see a population milestone. I see a direction. A signal that while much of the developed world is quietly shrinking, some places are still pushing forward. And that raises a question most people aren't asking yet. Not, why is Israel growing? But what happens when the countries that stopped growing realize it's too late to reverse it? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Population trends don't flip overnight. If a country stops having enough children today, the consequences show up decades later. And by the time it becomes obvious, you can't fix it quickly. So maybe this isn't about one country being different. Maybe it's about timing. Some countries are already deep into decline. Others haven't reached that point yet. And a few are still moving in the opposite direction. I started this thinking Israel was the exception. Now I'm not so sure. It might just be ahead, in a completely different direction. And if that's true, then the real story isn't about who's growing. It's about who's quietly disappearing.